make sure to do this when the butter is hot, or at least warm, because once it cools down, it's not going to mix the way it should. It's going to affect the consistency of the batter. Sorry guys if my instructions are not the clearest. I'm not the best at explaining things. But after this is done, it's time to move on to the olive oil. Here I noticed that I was supposed to use 2 tablespoons, and I instead used a teaspoon. So here's where I'm struggling, and asked my mom how many teaspoons are equivalent to a tablespoon. Here I'm realizing more. So thankfully I didn't do too much, and 3 teaspoons equal 1 tablespoon. So I followed that direction, and I did that 6 times. I was scared that I have wasted all these ingredients and I was about to mess up the recipe for you guys. Luckily that was not the case. But yeah, so I finished doing this, and then was on to the mixing. Okay, so once you start whisking around the ingredients, do that for about a minute. Don't over whisk too. That's what I've been told by my mom. Not quite sure how to tell when you overdid it, but just do it for about a minute and you should be good. Next up, we are using the 4 eggs. I'm not the best at cracking eggs. The first one wasn't too bad. Second one wasn't too bad either. The third one and the fourth one is where I messed up. Yep, there it is. But it's alright, no shells got in. That's what's most important. Now, after we crack the 4th egg, we move on to the vanilla. To add that vanilla flavor. Now I am taking out the vanilla, and I need to use 4 teaspoons of it. 4 teaspoons. That's 2. That's 3. And that is 4. 4 eggs and 4 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now we're gonna mix all of this together until it's lighter in color, and you can see that the consistency changes. And you keep whisking, and you can see obviously how it's changing. Now we are onto the dry ingredients. Here I have my flour. 1 cup of flour is what I'm going to be using. Now you guys can also sift. I think that's what it's called. Sift the flour so there's no like clumps or whatever. I did that for a long time when I used to do this recipe, but I tried it without it and it basically is the same. And it's easier, and if you don't have patience, it's a better option. Yeah, so mix in all the flour. Make sure to get all the clumps and everything to a good consistency. My arm was hurting after all this mixing. But it's always satisfying for me to do this. I love baking. I think it's very therapeutic. This is my favorite recipe to do, and it's so easy. Now we are moving on to the cacao. also evenly place it on the pan. It's important to make it even so that everything bakes at the same time and you don't have one side that's taking longer to cook while the other one is gonna burn if you leave it too long. Yeah, so here I am doing all of that and making a mess at the same time. This process took a lot longer than it usually does for me because I've never recorded it like this before. It took me like 40 minutes to set everything up camera-wise and then to retake everything, and it was a whole process. But it was fun and I'm happy to share my recipe with you guys. Now, if you guys would like to add something, you don't need to, but there are options like chocolate chips, which is what I'm going to use, or some people use walnuts. I'm sure people use almonds. You could really add anything that you like. Chocolate chips are just my fave. Now, this is how our beautiful batter looks, and we're going to pop it into the oven for about 15 minutes. Okay guys, now our beautiful brownie is out. Brownies are out of the oven. I kept it in for about 20 minutes. Here I'm showing how the edges should look. They should look pretty cooked. And the center is what should look pretty soft. You could use a toothpick, you could use your finger. And from the parchment paper, you see the way the middle looks. That's how it should. It's not like collapsing, but it's kind of like folding. And I'm moving it out of the way to cool down for a little while, probably 15 to 20 minutes. And here is the tray that I'm going to put it on after, because you can't take it out right away. Now the brownies are done cooling. I'm taking them out and putting them on the tray. You saw the way they look when the parchment paper folds them. The brownies are right now perfect. They cooked really good this time. And then I just pop it into the fridge so we could get like that fudgy consistency, because right now they're super soft in the middle. Some people like that. I like them more chewier. So I would put them in the fridge for about also another 20 minutes. Now, since they've been in the fridge cooling, you can cut them up. I like to cut off the ends. Me, my mom, my dad, we like to eat them like biscotti. That's what it reminds us of, a brownie version. And then I just take them off all of the sides. It's obviously up to preference now at this point. If you want to, you could keep them. I personally don't want them on the brownie, and I want them to look more square. Just a little perfectionist. But yeah, up to you what you guys want to do. But after I cut off those ends, that's when I go into cutting the actual little brownie pieces. You see, as I'm cutting them even now, you could see that the batter part is really soft still, even after being in the fridge. Now, don't get scared. It's supposed to be like that. After you cut up all your pieces into the sizes that you want, I personally put it back into the fridge. Now my mom, she likes to eat them like this. It's, again, preference. These are my perfect sizes for the brownies. I feel like they're not too small, they're not too big. Like little bite sizes. Perfect for a late night snack, which is, I'm making this in the